Thank you for letting me tell my story. I appreciate it. I think we should begin by talking about the house and the structure, and that dates 1810, when this house was built. Colonel Asa Platt built this house, and the house was designed by David Hoadley, an architect of the time. And Asa Platt was a colonel in the Army, and I believe probably retired at the time this structure was put up. But he bought it, and of course this was North Milford at the time. It wasn't, Orange wasn't incorporated till 1822. And so the deed for the house and all was in Milford records. The deed read that he bought the property, which is from Tyler City Road down to the Greek Orthodox Church, and then eastward toward Orange Center, with the dividing line being the Tyler City Brook or Race Brook. So the property was farmed. He was not a farmer that I recall at all. He had two maiden sisters who lived here with him. And at some point in time, I don't know the exact year, but I'm going to say around about 1840, he passed away. And the maiden sisters had no way of paying the taxes. And the town of Orange evicted them, and they were put on the street, and eviction notice was part of the record. So the town of Orange owned this house for a period of time, and it was used, as I recall, for various things for a few years. And one of the things it was it housed the poor. And I don't know the extent of that time, but it was housing the poor. And as my grandfather used to say, and it still does. So anyway, in 1847, my great uncle bought this house, went to auction. Have no idea what he paid for it, but he bought it. And there's a picture of him here. He was a butcher, and he had a store in the original Tyler City, which was part of the Tyler City Railroad, and the founder of that tried to establish a town. And various people did have stores in that location, and it would be over off of Russell Avenue and Quintard and Ferry Road. And of course the original trestle ran down toward where the power lines are, and also up to the Porter Lane and Lambert was one of the trestles.
And then it came down
and then
to
it came
Center, right?
Yep, came down and then over toward your property
yeah.
there. So there's a picture of him here in front of his store, and he was, you can just show, it's William E. Russell Meat Market.
I think that is so cool.
Can you have Marjorie actually hold it really quick?
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
Allison is that top one. Perfect.
Yeah,
That is great.
yeah. I don't know a whole lot about William, but he did have the house. He died, and he left it to his younger brother, much younger brother, and that would be my great-grandfather. So if we look at, let's see, yeah, bring that over there. my grandmother was the youngest of the family, and there were 7 sisters and 3 brothers. And this is a picture taken by the side of the house. And here is Edward, my great-grandfather, and Kitty, Mary Kitty Bishop, which was my great-grandmother. And then these are my great-aunts and the 3 great-uncles. And this was probably around 1915. And the same day as it was taken is the extended family picture. Again, same players. Same players, so these are all their children. My grandmother wasn't married yet. She was, and she was the youngest. And my grandfather isn't in the picture, and I know that they weren't married in 1915. They were married in 1918. So I recorded all the pictures of the names of the family, both all the children, and I do have on the other picture I do have their date of birth and death. Okay.
Hard to keep track of.
Mm-hmm. And then one other picture of that'd be great. These are the Russell girls. My grandmother is pictured here, and these are her sisters. And Bertha Clark was her oldest sister, and she married Ben Clark. Lottie married Albert Clark, which is Skippy's grandparents. And then the other girls, one went to West Haven, married a pharmacist, Mr. Wood. Then Mrs. Townley, she resided in Hampton most of the time. And my Aunt Daisy, who was very much a favorite of mine, she never married, and she lived here with us until she died. And she was a second mother and grandmother to my mother and I. She was darling, a very wonderful lady. And so all good memories.
Oh, just amazing. Quite the family.
Yeah. The Russell family, all the guys went elsewhere. They either went to Waterbury or they were in New Haven, but neither of the boys had any interest in the farm. And Daisy was here with my great-grandmother after my great-grandfather died. And the farm needed to be run. And just around that time, my grandmother met my grandfather, Clarence Hall. He was working for Joe Andrews up at the farm. He grew up in Meriden, but he came down to work for Joe Andrews and on the Andrews farm, which was Helen Ewan's family.
Okay.
And so my grandmother and grandfather were married in 1918, and I believe within a year of that time, my great-grandfather died. So as it was, you know, the Clarks had their farm, they had all things. So the plan was that my grandfather was a pretty good farmer. So it was agreed that he would come back, my grandmother and he would come back and take care of the farm and also see that Aunt Daisy was okay and that Grandma Kitty was all right. I believe she lived till about 1924 or so. And my mother was born in 1919. So she was still around, and my mother remembered her pretty much. And my grandfather ran the farm, and I also should say that my great-grandfather also ran a creamery called the Tyler City Creamery. And so it became, most substantially, the farm was a dairy farm. And if we look at the big picture, this is a picture of this house in about 1900. And as you can see, I mean, it was subsistence farming. There was no running water in this house until 1929. And of course, there were no bathrooms either. And there was no central heat, but I believe when around about this time, coal fire furnace was put through, and eventually, of course, oil burning furnace was established. The cube of the house was designed by Mr. Asa. Designed by Hoadley.
Right.
So, and it has, with the exception of the windows, which are 2x2, the actual windows are the same. There's been no change. And then some of the structure in the back of the house definitely has changed, but not the original cube of where we are here.
Great.
My grandfather continued to farm, and I believe around 1930, started to get a franchise for International Harvester, and he was at one time, this one, the original one, yeah. He ran the business with a Mr. Field. So it was Hall Field of Orange, Connecticut. And at the time, they had the franchise for McCormick Deering as well. And then they had a small shop out in the yard where Travel Land is today. And then that was expanded upon and I would say improved in its looks and everything around about 1935 or 1940. My mother was an only child, and in 1941, she married Charles Schenk, which was my dad. He was from Milford. They were married in June of 41, and of course, in December of 1941, Pearl Harbor was hit. And my father at the time was very much into cars all his life. He had a pretty good job downtown working at the Clayton Gengras Lincoln Mercury dealer. And unfortunately, he was 21 years old, and he decided that, I would say the grandmother and grandfather decided he should come and work here because he would able to get a deferment from the Army or Navy or whatever. So he took him up on it. I would say that my father was a cooperative but resistant person on the farm, but he worked. And he also repaired a lot of the tractors, so that was up his alley. So he did a good deal of the repairs of the machinery that was sold. And I have another yardstick here.
This one,
Yeah.
the actual names of some of
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and again, this was Racebrook Road, Orange, Connecticut. No zip code, no numbers. Tyler City wasn't really this address. It was always Racebrook.
Wow.
That's
And the telephone number.
telephone number. Yep. That's yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, strange.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And then
This one is really, because it's
Great.
got the different companies that they actually
Exactly. Yeah.
supported.
They had the International Harvester and the refrigeration. They sold freezers and refrigerators. Hot Point, the General Electric television and radio was also, they also sold them. I don't think they did any repair of their television that I remember, but they did sell them. And then I remember an awful lot of Hot Point refrigerators around here. We had that for a very long time. But anyway, again, it's nice memories of that. I remember a small portion of it. I believe by the end of World War II, there were still cows here. And in Orange, during that period of time, there was a lot of changeover from a agricultural to a development of the suburbs, from New Haven in particular. And so most of the land, many of the farms, I mean a good portion except for a few of them, were sold off for building lots. That also impacted the farm equipment business because they just weren't doing the kind of business they were doing before the war. And so in 1952, the basic company was dissolved, and the family sold off the property, which is now Hall Drive, Russell Court, Locust Drive, High Meadow Lane, Bishop Court, and those were made into building lots and sold. And that was done highly around 1955, 56. I remember we had the store, which was out there, and that exists. It now is Travel Land, but the family rented the commercial building to several people. For a long period of time, it was Colonial Reproduction Furniture, William K. English, and that he used it as a showroom because the showroom was used for the refrigeration and TV, and it was quite big, and there was a lot of storage also up on the second level. And I think Mr. English probably was there more 10 years or perhaps more. And then there was some bunch of concerns. There was a flower shop for a while, antique dealer, and portion of it was used by insurance agency. And then the family decided, mother and dad decided that they wanted to sell the property. So they sold it to a real estate office, Dan Noon and Jerry Spignacy. And they took it and were very successful with it for a period of time. Unfortunately, both those people passed, and Frank Distillo purchased the property from them. And then he rented it to a Caldwell banker, and Caldwell banker was there for a great length of time until they sold it, or I should say Frank sold it, because he still rented it. And so that's how Traveland, who came in and renovated a great deal. They're wonderful neighbors. They are cordial, and they're also, take good care of the property. They keep it up, and it's quite a nice thing. Right now, I enjoy being here. It's a big nut to take care of. I wouldn't really want to move anywhere. I'm hoping to age in place, and be here. I also have an advantage because it was always had a rental property to it. When growing up, I lived on the second floor, and my grandparents lived down here. back about 1968, my folks kind of put the house back to its original design, with the kitchen being in the country area, and all rather than around the back of the house. So my parents configured a 3-room apartment on the back, which has a separate entrance. And it's always been rented. It was they had farm people living here when they were working on the farm. So it's always been grandfathered in, and I rent that presently every month. And I've been, with wonderful help from a realtor that I really like to work with, she always finds a tenant for me. So that helps me keep staying here, because I have some income from the property in a way, and it's worked.
And it's a company too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it isn't. Presently, John has been here 2 years, and he's an engineer, and he works in North Haven, and we don't see each other hardly at all. But he's there, and we text, and he's a wonderful tenant. So it's kind of the story.
Good. So,
Yeah,
Marjorie, do you have any, growing up here, as you said, you can remember the cows and all this other stuff?
Well, the cows are pretty much gone by the time but I do, not the tractors. There was a few tractors still being in there. And my parents took the barn over, which is, that house faces High Meadow Lane. That was a 3-story barn. And they, with an architect, they commenced to drop it down on cement flooring as a crawl space, and then they designed it into a rather nice house, which exists now. And that house faces, the actual address is 11 High Meadow, but it's there. But that was the old barn.
That was great.
And that's how they held that and rented it. I always thought we would move out there, as a kid, but oh no, we're going to rent it. So I always thought, gee, that would be kind of nice, but that didn't happen, and they wound up selling it back a long time ago. But that was the story, and I can remember my mother really redecorated that, or should I say, did all the painting, staining of the wood in the house, and she was good at it. And so I can remember hanging out there an awful lot, waiting for her to finish painting or whatever had to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, did you go to school in Orange?
Yes, I went to Mary L. Tracy, and that was an elementary school at that point. And didn't become the kindergarten until many decades later. I was the first class to go in High Plains. I was in 3rd grade, and I had 2nd grade at Mary L. And then for 3rd grade, they opened up High Plains. And so I went there. And then I went on to Amity, and junior high school and high school. Excellent. That was a little time ago, a little bit, just a few years ago, think about it. But anyway.
You've got wonderful memories of the family and going through. It's just amazing. It really, and I'm glad now it's not going to get lost.
No,
do you have
no.
any other thing that was, it was outstanding with the company that you ran? The farm, obviously a farm store was something that was definitely need.
Yeah, for sure. That was good. It did well for a while.
Definitely.
And it's just it ran out of time.
Right.
It was not.
I agree.
The times weren't able to support the farm that much. If somebody bought a tractor, they usually took care of it, or you ran it for a number of years. It wasn't like back in the day when cars didn't last more than a couple of years. Everybody would trade their car every couple of years. The tractor usually hung in there, but then my father always used to laugh and say, sometimes the tractor sat there over the winter, and it was in the same pasture that spring.
yeah.
So, it needed to be tended to,
Right, right.
But
Yeah, we have a few of those on our land, yes.
I know.
I actually have a question. So, what was it that made so when the property was turned into, like, it was transformed into a store, so, because that was originally just part of the land, and then they made it into a public store for people to,
Right.
like, go
Yeah,
to. What was
yeah.
that decision, like, how did they make that decision to change
Well, I
that?
think my grandfather started to sell tractors, and so then he was in cahoots with Mr.
Fields, yeah.
Fields. And I think they did pretty well, but they didn't have, I saw pictures of the original. It was sort of just kind of a shack. And so I think they did well enough for a period of time. They were able to remodel and expand that. Also, I must say that my grandparents, over a period of time, paid all the siblings, my grandmother's siblings, over a period of time, paid every one of them for the house at the particular time. And if you could show me that ledger, this is an archive. This is William E. Russell, Book of Accounts,
Oh my gosh.
1840. So this is from the meat market.
Oh my
And it's, people learned how to write those days. I'm telling you, all here.
Oh.
You can look at
Look
all
at this.
the entries.
Look at these entries.
And that was from when they had the store?
When they had the meat market.
The meat. This was with
The
great uncle's meat market, William E.
And that was down to
at
Tyler City. They were
Right.
trying to make this whole area into a city,
Right.
but look at that.
So at the time, in 1840, he didn't really own this house. Where he was, I'm not sure, but that's, yeah,
Just page after page.
yeah. The names come out. It's kind of good. And this is a ledger from 1941, when it was the Hall Farm Equipment business, and my grandmother did some of the bookkeeping. But they also had B. Norris,
I'm gonna
who
hold it
was
up like this. Look at this.
yeah.
Again, all the writing and
Yep.
everything was done. No computers.
Yeah, yeah. Debit and credit. So it is pretty good, and it goes through the war too. So it's 41 is the first year. That was the year my parents were married, and so it goes right up. And things were so cheap. I mean, it was unbelievable.
What'd you find?
Yeah.
Over the years of how it like had changed so many times from, going kind of from different, there was obviously different businesses and serving different industries. So like you went from, it seems like there was multiple things that were going on. There was the dairy farm and the
right.
repair
And
the meat.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just,
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that long about the last, it was mostly the business that was there, not so much the agricultural. But prior to that, the Tyler City Creamery. I mean, it's, and that was over at Tyler City as well. So, but it's crazy. Here's the receipts for the milk at the $246. I mean, that was a
That was a lot.
Yeah, but it was really, that's a lot. I mean,
But I think that's the thing that we've been hearing is the kind of the evolution of an area.
Yeah.
Seeing these businesses, like where they, seeing how just in general when Orange was started, just seeing how like it was Orange, and then you slowly start to see, people working together, starting these businesses.
That's
and
right, right.
It's really interesting to hear about how
Sure.
that began, because
That's right.
there weren't as many businesses, and as you were saying, it was one of the first ones. So
Right, and it was, yeah, and it was an agricultural community. West Haven was part of Orange until 1929, I believe, and West Haven wanted to be more commercial, and it was called West Farms, and they were so they went about separating themselves to more the commercial downtown city. And it grew, population and all, and Orange always wanted to stay on, well, from farms to homes,
Yeah,
suburbs, you
that's
know.
good.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, even that, you're losing a lot of customers if West Haven is heading off in a different direction. So
Exactly.
even those customers
That's
were
right.
dwindling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
oh my
West Haven had their Hubbard Farms, which is the western part of, should I say western part of West Haven,
Yeah.
and that, you know, they finally went into a suburban type of housing area as well.
Yeah, because I think really, as you said, after the post-war, it was amazing the different communities that sprung up almost overnight in Orange.
Yeah, and a good many of the houses that you see really were erected in the 1950s, 1960s in particular.
Yeah.
All these, I mean, when my parents were married in 41, Racebrook Road wasn't paved. It was more or less gravel. So you can just see that,
Yeah.
how that is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
so cool. What's something that like you really appreciated about Orange growing up? Like, what was one of your favorite things being in Orange?
I remember the Fireman's Carnival on the Green. And not to take anything away from, because the fairgrounds is much more appropriate, I would say
That was awesome.
the social aspect of of that carnival, everybody was doing something, and they had these little tents, very small tents with, you know, all the betting and the bingo and all that sort of thing, and the you know, the pony rides, and people really took that weekend, and everybody went to the carnival at least one night, and there would be a lot of socialization because people would meet. The Clarks would always have some kind of a party going on at the same time, and it was truly, certainly wasn't as expansive. There wasn't the rides, but the camaraderie of the firemen, which the volunteer firemen, they ran these little booths, and it was real social, and I think that it was. I've never really gotten into it after that. It just wasn't the same, and of course there wasn't, you know, I mean, in the 50s and 60s it was still pretty rural. I mean, it was, you didn't really need to have anything big, and not to keep other people out of Orange, but people didn't come from all around. It was Orange people, you know, families that used that. It was fun. That was real fun. Yeah.
That was a time, I think, with all of us, you know, everybody's busy, you go through your school year, summertime comes, everybody was, you know, usually working around the farm doing their little jobs, and the Fireman's Carnival was the time you just knew, I'm going to see all my friends at school, I'm going to see Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so.
It's always the first weekend in August. So, you know, you got over
exciting.
4th of July, and then it was, the carnival.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, they always gave away a car, and I mean, it was who got the car, you know, and who got the television, and, you know, it was, you probably knew who it was, You know,
Right, right,
sometimes you
right,
do.
Exactly. And
It
I
was-
think even now, though, you know, obviously it's still run by the volunteers and they do a phenomenal job.
Yes.
But Thursday night is still known in town as Orange Night.
Yeah.
And that's when most of the families in Orange will go up, and you know you're going to see quite a few of your neighbors, and it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
still, you know, for
Yeah.
that reason.
Yes.
That evening is wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's probably my nicest memory. I'm not saying that there weren't other things that I enjoyed. I think school was okay. Orange schools were pretty caring in lots of ways toward people, I think. There were some good memories of, you know, I still see some of the people that I went to school with. And I remember seeing them at various times, and do you remember we used to walk all the way around High Plains? Yes, during recess, yeah. They didn't want us to go all the way around, but we did. You know, it was
Very daring.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, for fourth grade or whatever, you know, and but that's. If you have any other questions.
I actually do. I know I said I only had one more, but I
No,
totally lied to you because it's just been so fun talking to you. So I'm gonna ask you one more.
No.
But I was gonna ask, do you find a lot of different people we've been talking to, or actually one in mind that I'm thinking of is Mr. Busbuda. He was talking about how his family really kept to that goal of having all of their family stay in Orange and live close together, and be able to watch their
Yes.
future generation grow up.
Yep.
So that's one of their things that they've been committed to.
Yes.
Do you find that a lot of the families that you knew growing up in Orange stayed here, or are you happy that you stayed here?
Yeah, I am. I'm happy to be here. I can name some families that the Busbudas is one that they go on. The Clarks are another. I mean, there's many more, and as well as your family.
Yeah.
I didn't really have much choice. It's sort of growing up with 5 grown-ups in the house, and I don't have any sisters or brothers. So, I didn't have a lot of choice. And it was that's just the way it was. Other than that, I really thank you for spending the time with me.
Thank you for having us.
You
I-
were
So much.
awesome.
The
Awesome.
way that you hosted it, I just felt like I could honestly keep going for hours right now.
Definitely.
I really love
we're the little
listening to you.
kids, and you are just giving us all kinds of knowledge, and it's
Well,
just beautiful.
If there's ever questions or whatever, I do the best I can to answer them.
Awesome.
I wished if only my grandmother was here, she would be able to go back and tell you
it's so
all these
sad.
pictures.
We've missed that generation.
Yeah, and the issue is nobody put any names on pictures. I mean, I know who they are, but there's no names, and because she knew that her family's generation, that the great grandparents
That's it.
and some of their relatives, there would be this one or that one, but I didn't pay a lot of attention at that time.
We didn't. We were busy. We were doing
Yeah.
other things.
That's
I mean,
true.
It's interesting talking to even Gloria Kapp about it.
Yes.
And how, I knew the Capslatras. Yeah, I was in their greenhouse. Blah blah blah. But who hung around there? Jim Zioli,
Yes.
because that was his interest and whatnot. Well, I had to get back and feed the horses, so But it's just circumstantial on how some people were able to really sit down,
right.
listen to the stories.
Yes. And I believe me, I found these pictures, family pictures, in a drawer, in a cabinet in the attic.
Yep, yep.
And I said, geez, I had the opportunity
You did
to
a
know the
beautiful job.
girls.
Yeah, right.
I knew
That's huge.
those are my great aunts. I knew them, and a good many of the faces in the family picture. But I knew some of them. But I said, gee, I've got to write this down.
It's
And
important.
I
'Cause
did.
a lot of the history
Right.
just
And I
blends away.
had these pictures copied And I took them to Milford Photo, and
Yeah,
they did a
did a
really
nice
good
job.
job. And then I gave to all the ones that I like, Skippy and
nice.
Maureen Clark,
Yes,
Don's wife,
yes.
and Charlotte
Good,
Clark,
good.
Ingram,
Yeah, good.
and her and Anna Mae, which is her sister, and
Right.
to Skippy.
Good, good.
I gave them pictures of
And then
those.
that can filter down, yeah,
Yeah.
good.